All right, we wrap up our candidate profiles now with Robert Comstock. Robert, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate having you.
Thank you.
Let's start off with your background. What is it that you've done throughout your life that you believe qualifies you for this position?
I came here in 1976 with a faith-based community that opened one of the first homeless shelters to ever exist in Utah. And it was totally faith-based. And so my experience with those socioeconomic issues associated with homelessness, and I was on staff and then on the board for about 10 years of those homeless shelters. And that was my avocation. I also worked as a furniture manufacturer, very high-end furniture and cabinets. Mm-hmm. And during that time, and then in the 1980s, I was a juvenile corrections chaplain. And while I was there, I saw things that I thought needed to be changed, and I started a nonprofit to bring a different type of program to help families whose young people were in youth corrections when they were a organization that the juvenile courts could refer young people to when they came out of youth corrections. Mm-hmm. And my experiences with that led me to start thinking about politics in early 1990s.
I know I've seen you around as I've been covering stories and stuff, advocating in the community for various causes as well.
Yeah.
Pretty active.
Very active, yes. That's always been what I do mm-hmm. outside of my day job.
Yep, and that is?
For the last 13 years, I've been teaching public school in the Jordan School District. Mm-hmm. I've been teaching wood shop.
All right, so your patience levels, you've had plenty of practice with those. Let's move on to your interest for this position. You ran for this position before.
Yes.
You were unsuccessful back then. What is it that said, you know, now's the time to give this another shot?
Well, I ran in 2011 against Jim DeBacchus, and I was somewhat successful even though I didn't win. Some of the reforms I was talking about with you about earlier that I proposed, that more Democrats should run for each office, and the delegates should decide which candidates got access to the ballot, as opposed to the executive committee deciding mm-hmm. carte blanche who could run for office in the Democratic Party.
So what about this time now? What is it that makes you think, you know what, I need to give this a shot and see if I can get the chairmanship of the party?
Being involved in the Democratic Party for 30 years, I've come up with a lot of strong feelings about what needs to happen in the Democratic Party, a strong vision for what needs to happen. And I have a three parts to my vision for the party. It's basically growth, and our voice as Democrats must become stronger based on our values, and we must defend representative democracy because it's under attack, oftentimes by the Republican Party, who want to suppress voters instead of encourage them.
So you're running up against an incumbent, you and two other challengers. What is not happening now that you think you could do if you were elected as chair?
I'm going to be very honest. For the last 2 years, I've been concentrating on teaching. I haven't been active for the last 2 years that Daisy has been serving as chair. As far as I can tell, she's very sincere about her views, and she is a progressive like I am, and so I'm not familiar with what she's done wrong. I've heard a lot of criticism, but to me, she seems to be very sincere in her efforts to want to lead the party in the right way.
So as a progressive, how do you reach out to the more moderate wing of the party and connect with them and make them feel like they are welcome in the party as well?
Our values, progressive values, are not that different than moderate values. My values personally are somewhat conservative. And we can compromise. The problem with the Democratic Party, we've been compromising our principles and our values. We have common values. The progressives might have a little bit different policies on how to address those issues, mm-hmm. but what candidate Sanders pointed out in 2016, the candidate that really talks about the issues that are really affecting real people in America that candidate and Bernie turned out an absolutely unexpected number of voters because someone was talking about the problems that we experience daily, such as healthcare and here in Utah, air quality, environmental issues.
So if you were elected, obviously one of the biggest roles of the party is to help Democrats get elected. Made some gains in November in the state house, but really struggling on the state level. What would your plan be to help candidates perform better on the state level? We have about 30 seconds left.
Let me back up. My vision has three parts. We need to grow in numbers. We need numbers. With new numbers comes new funding. With new funding, we can fund candidates better. But candidates need volunteers, and we struggle every election year to find volunteers. There were 6 Latina candidates about 8 years ago that all lost in the West Valley, the west part of Salt Lake County. They lost by less than 200 votes each. We could have won with volunteers, boots on the ground.
We're going to have to end it on that note. Appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
You're welcome.